The morning light spilled through the thin curtains of a small apartment on the edge of a quiet American town. Dust floated gently in the air, glowing for a moment before disappearing again. Ethan sat at a simple wooden table, holding a warm cup of coffee with both hands, staring out the window as if the answers to his life were hidden somewhere beyond the street. Cars passed slowly, neighbors walked their dogs, and the world seemed calm, steady, and predictable. That predictability was exactly what troubled him. Ethan had always lived a careful life. He chose safe options, made reasonable decisions, and avoided risks whenever possible. His friends described him as reliable, polite, and sensible. Teachers once praised him for being disciplined and realistic. But deep inside, there was a quiet voice that whispered something different. It asked questions he tried to ignore. What if there was more? What if he was capable of something greater than the small, comfortable life he had built? That voice had been with him since childhood. When he was young, he imagined big futures for himself. He dreamed of building something meaningful, of traveling far beyond his hometown, of standing on stages and sharing ideas that mattered. But as years passed, those dreams slowly faded. People around him encouraged practicality. They said dreams were nice, but reality was harsh. They said thinking too big only led to disappointment. Over time, Ethan learned to shrink his dreams to fit the expectations of others. Now, as an adult, he worked at a local office doing tasks that felt repetitive and empty. Each day looked almost exactly like the one before it. Wake up early, drive the same road, sit at the same desk, come home tired, and repeat. On the outside, his life looked stable. On the inside, he felt restless, like a bird living in a cage it had forgotten was open. One evening, after a long day at work, Ethan stopped by a small bookstore downtown. The bell above the door rang softly as he stepped inside. The smell of old pages and polished wood wrapped around him like a memory. He wandered through the aisles without any clear purpose, letting his fingers trace the spines of books. That was when a worn paperback caught his attention. The title was simple, yet powerful. It spoke about thinking big and believing beyond limits. He picked it up, not expecting much, and paid for it without hesitation. That night, he sat on his couch and began to read. The words felt different from anything he had read before. They were not loud or dramatic, but calm and confident. The message was clear. Most people do not fail because they lack talent or opportunity. They fail because they think too small. They limit themselves long before the world ever does. As Ethan turned the pages, something inside him began to shift. The book explained that thinking big was not about arrogance or unrealistic fantasies. It was about allowing yourself to imagine a future without immediately shutting it down. It was about giving your mind permission to explore possibilities instead of focusing on fear. Thinking big meant believing that growth was possible, even if the path was unclear. He closed the book late that night and stared at the ceiling. His heart felt heavier, but also lighter at the same time. Heavy with regret for the years he had spent doubting himself, and light with the realization that it was not too late. He understood something important in that moment. His life had been shaped not by a lack of ability, but by the limits he had placed on his own thinking. The next morning, Ethan woke up with a different energy. Nothing around him had changed. The same apartment, the same street, the same job awaited him. But his thoughts were different. Instead of asking how to survive the day, he asked what he could build over time. Instead of focusing on what could go wrong, he considered what could go right. At work, he began to notice opportunities he had ignored before. He listened more carefully in meetings. He shared ideas he once kept to himself. His voice felt strange at first, as if it did not belong in the room, but he spoke anyway. Some people nodded. Some looked surprised. No one laughed. That alone felt like a small victory. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan continued to challenge his old habits. When fear whispered that he was not good enough, he responded with curiosity instead of obedience. When doubt told him to stay quiet, he asked himself what would happen if he spoke up. He began to understand that thinking big was not a single decision. It was a daily practice. Outside of work, he started working on a project he had always postponed. It was something creative, something personal, something that scared him. He did not tell many people about it at first. He worked on it in the early mornings and late nights, fueled by quiet determination rather than instant results. Some days, progress felt slow. Other days, it felt invisible. But he kept going. There were moments when the old fear returned. Late at night, doubt crept in and questioned everything. Who do you think you are? Why would anyone care? What if you fail? Ethan learned that these thoughts did not disappear just because you decided to think bigger. They showed up anyway. The difference was that he no longer let them decide his actions. One afternoon, while walking home from work, Ethan noticed how different the town felt. The buildings were the same, the streets unchanged, yet everything seemed more alive. He realized the change was not in the world, but in him. When you think small, the world feels narrow. When you think big, the same world feels full of possibility. Months passed, and the small project he worked on quietly began to grow. A few people noticed. Then a few more. Opportunities started appearing, not all at once, but gradually. None of it felt magical or sudden. It felt earned. Thinking big had not removed obstacles from his life, but it had given him the strength to face them. Ethan also noticed changes in his relationships. He spoke with more confidence. He listened with more intention. He encouraged others to talk about their dreams instead of dismissing them. Some people felt inspired. Some felt uncomfortable. Thinking big has a way of challenging not only yourself, but those around you. Not everyone is ready for that, and Ethan learned to accept it. One evening, he visited his parents. Sitting at the old kitchen table, he shared stories about his ideas and plans. His parents listened quietly. There was concern in their eyes, but also pride. They had wanted safety for him, not limitation. They had feared disappointment, not growth. That conversation felt like a bridge between who Ethan had been and who he was becoming. As time went on, setbacks appeared. A plan failed. An opportunity fell through. Criticism arrived from unexpected places. In the past, these moments would have sent Ethan back into his shell. Now, they hurt, but they did not stop him. He understood something crucial. Thinking big does not guarantee success. It guarantees growth. He learned that people who think big still feel fear. They still make mistakes. They still face rejection. The difference is that they do not let those experiences define their limits. They see them as part of the journey, not the end of the road. One night, Ethan returned to the bookstore where it all began. He stood in the same aisle, holding the same book in his hands. This time, he smiled. He had not become a different person overnight. He had become a braver version of himself over time. The power of thinking big had not changed his personality. It had expanded it as he walked home under the soft glow of streetlights. Ethan felt something he had not felt in years. Peace. Not the quiet peace of settling for less, but the deep peace of knowing he was moving forward with intention. His future was still uncertain, but it no longer felt frightening. It felt open. Thinking big had taught him that life does not grow automatically. It grows in the direction of your thoughts. When you believe you are small, your actions follow that belief. When you believe you are capable of more, your actions begin to stretch toward that belief. Even if progress is slow, Ethan knew there would be more challenges ahead. There would be days when doubt felt loud again. There would be moments when the old comfort of thinking small seemed tempting. But he also knew something stronger now. He knew that his thoughts were powerful, and that choosing to think big was one of the most important decisions he could make each day. The story of Ethan is not about becoming famous or wealthy or perfect. It is about allowing yourself to imagine a bigger life and then taking small, consistent steps toward it. It is about understanding that your mind sets the boundaries long before reality does. And it is about realizing that the greatest limitation you will ever face is the one you accept without question. If this story made you reflect on your own life, your own dreams, and your own limits, remember this. You do not have to change everything at once. You only have to stop thinking small. I share stories like this every day. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one.